Audible, visible? Please give me a thumbs up. Great. Students are joining. We'll start in a minute. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Unacademy. This is lecture 3 of Indian polity. What all have we discussed till now? We looked at what is the significance of the subject Indian polity for prelims, mains, essay, as well as the personality test. Then we discussed what exactly do we need to study in Indian polity: constitution, the laws passed by the legislature, and various judicial verdicts. For example, an important verdict is coming up today. Can anybody tell me what that verdict is all about? Everybody case. I'm talking about an important verdict is to be delivered by the Supreme Court today. What is that all about? Electoral bonds, whether these electoral bonds are constitutional or not. That is also something that we will have to discuss, but not today when we will discuss the elections chapter. Then we looked at what is a constitution: written, unwritten, unitary, federal. And we also looked at what is the separation of powers, what is the doctrine of checks and balances. Then we tried to understand what is constitutionalism. Then we looked at what is preamble of the Indian Constitution. And before that, we discussed what are the various different types of majorities: absolute majority, simple majority, effective majority, special majority, and there are various flavors of special majority. And then we initiated a discussion on preamble. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, political justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, which will assure unity and integrity, the dignity of an individual. And we discussed that if you look at this preamble, we can break it down into 4 parts for our understanding, for the sake of the civil services examination. 1, we the people. And what does it signify? If the constitution of this country derives its authority from somebody or is authoritative, guarantees respect, that is because of the people of this country, because sovereignty lies, ultimate power lies with the people of India. That means this constitution is the gift of the people of this country to themselves through their representatives who were in the Constituent Assembly. Clear? And the second thing that this preamble tells us, what is the nature of Indian state? Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. But if you notice this carefully, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, there is no comma which separates one term from the other. And all these are mentioned in the capital. What does that mean? That means you can't isolate one nature from the other. You have to take it as an integral whole. You leave one, the entire essence is gone. You delete one, the entire essence is gone. That's why you have to look at all these natures as an integral whole. It is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic in together. And then it also tells us what are the objectives of the Constitution: equality, liberty, fraternity, justice, so on and so forth. And this preamble also tells us the date on which the Constitution was adopted, which is different from the date this Constitution came into force, was enacted. Why? Because we discussed the history part of it. The Purna Swaraj resolution passed by Indian National Congress at its historic Lahore session, which was presided over by Pandit Nehru. Clear? Any questions as of now? Any doubts from yesterday? No, no. Which means either you have not revised or you did not understand anything. Okay. Now let's discuss something important. We discussed the nature of the Indian state. I told you about sovereign, democratic, republic. Done. But 2 different terms got added. On the 42nd Amendment Act, the year was 1976, 2 terms got added to the nature of the Indian state. One was socialist, the other was secular. One more term got added: integrity, under the objectives of the preamble. And all of this we will discuss one by one. But first up, let's understand what is this socialist. And for that, we need to understand what do we mean by socialism. Any term which ends with ISM, we call that term an ideology. For example, socialism is an ideology. Communalism is an ideology. Communism is an ideology. Because any word which ends with ISM is an ideology. Any word which ends with TION or ION, it is a process. Communalization is a process. Secularization is a process. Globalization is a process. But communism or socialism, what is it? It is an ideology. And to understand this ideology, we need to understand who this gentleman was, Karl Marx. And look at the beauty of this man. One French philosopher said, Karl Marx's teachings can be understood in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, 50 years. No matter what subject you study, whether it is philosophy, whether it is sociology, whether it is political science, whether it is economics, whether it is history, you will have to read Karl Marx. You'll have to understand Karl Marx. Look at the influence of this man on the various disciplines of knowledge. But be that as it may, Karl Marx, he says that history passes through various stages. And he says there are 6 stages to human history. The first stage starts with primitive communism. What is this primitive communism? Vikash is saying geography. I told you yesterday I don't understand geography. So I don't know Karl Marx is relevant in geography. I know, but I did not want to give the example of geography. I don't like that subject. But be that as it may, primitive communism. According to Karl Marx, when history started, there were people who were working as hunting-gatherers. They would hunt animals, they would gather belongings, but it was a beautiful society where they did not have the surplus. So whatever they were gathering, whatever they were hunting, they were also consuming it amongst themselves. There was no such concept of private property. So everything was owned by the community in itself. And that is what we call a beautiful, according to Karl Marx, a beautiful equalitarian society where everybody is equal. Nobody has his own private property. All are working in the same area. And whatever we get, we also distribute amongst ourselves. Beautiful primitive communism, beautiful equalitarian society. But Karl Marx says then this society got destroyed. And how it got destroyed? According to Marx, whenever means of production changes, whenever technology changes, we will see there will be a change in the society. And for that, although you don't need to understand this, but still very briefly, I'll tell you, Marx talked about something called base and structure hypothesis. This base is made up of economics. Economy, you call it, technology, you call it. Whenever economy changes, whenever economic base changes, everything in the superstructure changes. Superstructure is whether it is family, whether it is politics, whether it is education, everything changes. And this is where Marx said it's all about economy. Whenever economic base changes, whenever means of production changes, which changes because of technology, which we will discuss very briefly today, everything in the superstructure changes, family structure changes. For example, during the feudal society or in an agricultural society, what was the status of family? The status of the family, which is in the superstructure, the status of the family was joint family. Why? Because Karl Marx said more hands, more the number of people, more number of hands who would assist this family in agriculture. That means they would produce more and more children, and ultimately these families would knit together, they would stay together. But whenever technology changed, with the coming in of machines, industrialization, capitalism emerged, which we will discuss today. Capitalism emerged, and ultimately people started migrating towards cities because that is where the jobs were. So this joint families changed into nuclear family. But now we are in a hyper-capitalist growth. We don't talk about families anymore in sociology. We talk about households. But we don't have to deviate into this route. Long story short, Karl Marx talks about that the history has traveled through various stages, through various phases. The first phase was a primitive communism. It was hunting, gathering society. They would hunt for their living. They would gather the belongings. There was no such thing as private property. And then the society changed, collapsed. When the society collapsed, we entered into ancient society. And Karl Marx says, from this time onwards, the entire world, the entire society got divided into two: haves, have-nots. So Karl Marx says, after this point, classes emerged. Which are these classes? Who are determined by their economic status. Those who have capital, those who have means of production, those who control means of production, they are haves. They have it. Those who work for them, they are have-nots. So these are two classes which emerged after the destruction of the primitive communism. And that's what Karl Marx said. The history of the world is the history of class struggle. These classes have struggled with each other. Karl Marx further says, even this ancient society got destroyed. And then this ancient society transformed itself into a feudal society. And this is also where two classes emerged: landlords, serfs. And in ancient society, Karl Marx says two classes emerged: masters and slaves. Karl Marx says after the feudal society, we entered into a capitalist society. And in this capitalist society also, there are two classes which emerged. One, bourgeois. The other, proletariat. The whole point is, we are talking about what is this concept socialist, which is mentioned in the preamble. To understand this concept, we need to understand the writings of Karl Marx very briefly. Karl Marx says history has traveled through various stages. The first is primitive communism, where there are no classes. Everybody constitutes a single class of hunting gathering society. There was no such thing as private property. But Karl Marx says the society got destroyed when some people started emerging as a class. They started having and controlling private property, and then because of their private property, they took others as their slaves. So now throughout the history, there are two classes which emerge: haves, have-nots. In ancient society, who are the haves? Masters. Who are the have-nots? Slaves. And they constantly struggle with each other. This society got destroyed when emerged a feudal society, where there are landlords and there are those poor agricultural workers, serfs, who do not control land, but they work on these lands. But who are these landlords? Absentee landlords. Once in a while, they will come to their farms, they will collect the profit, and they will give peanuts to their workers, to their serfs. The real profit is pocketed by these landlords. And this is where there's a massive gulf, a widening gulf between the rich and the poor. But when technology changed, because when technology changes, economic base changes, superstructures will change. And Karl Marx says, now in England, in Europe, industrialization started. Machines were invented, and ultimately the means of production changed. And the production quality also changed. And this is where capitalism emerged, where there are two classes, bourgeois and the proletariat. Who are these bourgeois? Who control these industries, who control these factories. A small amount of investment, small amount of money that they pay as wages to these workers, and massive profit, but they don't share this profit with the workers. And Karl Marx says these workers live in unimaginable situations. They don't have medical insurance. Sometimes they're working in factories and then their hands get cut and then there is no benefit available to these workers. They work under horrible situations, according to Karl Marx. And Karl Marx says this is where in capitalist society the problem is that of an alienation. Alienation in the sense the workers are alienated from fellow workers. The workers are alienated from their product. Alienated from fellow workers in the sense there are 10 workers working on, let's say, for example, they're working on manufacturing an engine. There are 10 workers working, but there is a manager as well who keeps a track whether these workers are working continuously or not. And the moment one worker tries to interact with another worker, shut up, go back to your work. I don't want you to waste your time. I'm answerable to the bourgeois. So now the worker is completely focused on his work and he is alienated from the fellow worker. He doesn't even realize who the fellow worker is. They don't interact. Such is a horrible practice, according to Marx. And then these workers are alienated from their produce as well, from their product as well. For example, before capitalism emerged, everything would have been handmade. So even a shoe that you were manufacturing, a shoe that you were making, for example, you go to a temple, on the stairs of the temple, you see a shoe. You will quickly identify yourself with this because this is my creation. I have created this shoe. But for example, in a capitalist society, even if there is a Maruti Suzuki car which is driving on the road, and you may have worked there, you may have worked on a part of it, but you don't know how the entire product looks like because you may have focused only on engine, but not on other parts. Whether that is good or bad, we don't have to get into that. That's what Karl Marx felt. Because in capitalist society, there is division of labor. The workers get isolated from their produce as well. And the worst part is, I cannot even afford what I have created. That's what Karl Marx and his friend Friedrich Engels, they said, all the workers of the world unite. Let's come together and let's overthrow this capitalist system. And we have to overthrow this capitalist system so that the gulf between the rich and the poor is constricted. But for that, Karl Marx said, one thing that we need to destroy before we can start this revolution, we need to destroy religion. Why? Because Karl Marx said, religion is the opium of the masses. What Karl Marx asked workers to do, all the workers of the world unite. Unite, let's have a revolution and overthrow this exploitative capitalist system. But Karl Marx says, unless and until religion is present, these people will not revolt. Why? Because they have this religion which is their opium. They will not revolt. Why? Because look at one of the hymns in Christianity, according to Karl Marx. It is easy for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the heaven. There is this needle which is used for stitching. On top of that, there is a head which is very small. Karl Marx says in Christianity, in one of the hymns, it is mentioned that it is easy for a camel to pass through the eye of that needle than for a rich man to enter the heaven. Is it possible for a camel to pass through that eye? No. That means it is impossible for the rich man to enter the heaven. So what will these poor workers do? We are here for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Let's suffer, but then we will go to heaven. And there we will teach them a lesson. All these Ambanis, Tatas, Birlas, Adanis, they will not go to heaven. We will go to heaven. So why revolt? So religion is like an opium. You will not be able to come out of this exploitative practice. You will not be able to embark on this revolution to overthrow this capitalist system because you have this opium of religion which is not letting you to revolt for your own benefit. And that is why Karl Marx said religion should be destroyed. And that is why in so-called communist states, these are anti-religion atheist states. If you look at Cuba, if you look at countries in Latin America, China, Russia to a large extent, these are anti-religion atheist states because they have understood or they've imbibed the teachings of Karl Marx, wherein he said religion is the opium of the masses. It's the hope of the hopeless creature. But Karl Marx said, if we have to destroy capitalism, we cannot quickly transition into a beautiful stateless society, into a beautiful egalitarian society. For that, after capitalism, we will enter into socialism. Socialism it's a preparatory stage for communism. The final stage of history would be communism. Well, Karl Marx said history will rest. Because history is like a cycle. We started with primitive communism, then ancient society, then feudal society, then capitalist society, then socialist society. And the socialist society is like what? It's a preparatory stage. We're preparing for something. And what are we preparing for? A final stage, which is we will go back to communism, where the history will rest. But what will happen in socialism is that state will be present. What is the state? Government. What state will do? State will distribute wealth. Everything will be controlled by state. There won't be a private property. Because in all these societies, ancient, feudal, capitalist, two classes have emerged, haves and have-nots. In capitalism, bourgeois and proletariat. And the gulf between them is too wide. What we need to do now, there won't be a private property. Private property will be abolished in socialism. When private property will be abolished, everything will be controlled by the state. And state will take some time. Time to do what? To remove this inequality in the society. To bridge this gap between the rich and the poor. So state will work over time. State will work continuously. The government will work continuously to ensure that the wealth is distributed amongst the people. And once this wealth gets distributed equally, that means now there is no haves and have-nots. There's a beautiful equality in society. Then the state's job is over. And then the state will, according to Karl Marx, wither away, disappear, evaporate. And it is this stateless state which will emerge. And the stateless state is what we call communism, where there is no role of the state, where it will be people's government. Or in a sense, it will be people will themselves take decisions for their own welfare. There is no need for a state. There is no need for a government. And what Karl Marx called communism, a stateless state, that Mahatma Gandhi called Ram Rajya. Mahatma Gandhi's vision was also a stateless society towards the end, where there is no government. If you have understood this concept of Karl Marx, what exactly is socialism? It is a preparatory stage for communism. It prepares our society so that we will reach a point where the state will wither away, state will disappear, we will emerge into a stateless society. This socialist state is one where there is no private property, where everything is controlled by the state. Is this type of socialism talked about by our preamble, which was added into the preamble by 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976? That there will come a stage, that the nature of the Indian state is such that we will prepare our country, our state for communism, so that there will come a time where the state will disappear. Is this concept of socialism mentioned in the preamble where the Constitution says there will be no private property, everything will be controlled by the state? Indira Gandhi was asked, because it was during emergency, when constitutional amendment was made, when this term socialism, secularism got added to the preamble, socialist, secular got added to the preamble. She was asked, Madam Gandhi, what is the meaning of this term socialism? Indira Gandhi said, we have our own brand of socialism. Indira Gandhi was asked, can you elaborate? She did not. constitutional experts now say it is not Marxian socialism that is mentioned in the preamble. It is basically Fabian socialism. What is Fabian socialism? Fabian is a school of sociology which emerged in London. What is Fabian socialism? What did Karl Marx ask the workers to do? All the workers of the world, because it's not differentiated by geography. Worker, no matter where you are, whether you are in England, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kenya, India, anywhere, you are one class because you will always be exploited by the bourgeois. So forget about geographies. You are a single class. All the workers of the world unite. And unite to do what? To overthrow this capitalist system. That means what we need to do, we need a revolution. But what is the purpose of Karl Marx? That this inequality should be eradicated. This exploitation should be eradicated. Bourgeois thinks that I pay wages, I pay salary to my workers, and now I have owned him. And workers are also made to believe, why will he give his profit to us? He has invested a lot of money. He's giving us wages. He's giving us salary, and every year we get the appraisal as well, we get the bonus as well, we get the incentives as well. The poor worker does not realize it is your money, which this bourgeois is investing. Because through your work, whatever is profited by this bourgeois, he is investing it back into that company or a factory and is producing multiple profits. And you get peanuts in the form of salary. But be that as it may, that's how capitalism works. Karl Marx said, workers have to unite to overthrow this capitalist system. That means what we need. We need a revolution. But what is the purpose? The purpose is that this inequality should be reduced. And for that, the revolution can be violent as well, can be a bloody revolution as well. Fabian socialism said, we agree with the objective of Karl Marx that you want to reduce inequality. You want to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. For that, we don't need a bloody revolution. For that, the state will take its role. State will ensure that those who do not possess anything, they will be provided some scholarships, some subsidies. They will be provided capital so that they can also lift themselves. We don't need a revolution. And we don't need a bloody revolution to bridge this gap between the rich and the poor, to reduce inequality in the society. We need a strong government, a capable government, which through its policies would result in bridging this gap between rich and the poor. So basically, the Constitution, in its preamble, when it talks about socialist, that means one character of the Indian state, one nature of the Indian state is that we are socialist. That does not mean we do not recognize private property. That does not mean we want to abolish private property. All that we want is that this inequality should be reduced so that the standard of living of the people enhances. And that can happen through government intervention, through government policies, through government laws. And that's exactly what Supreme Court said in DS Nakara versus Union of India, 1983. What is socialist? The idea of a welfare state. That means this government exists for everybody, not just for the bourgeois, not only for the capitalist class, not only for the startup founders. This government works for the welfare of weaker, marginalized, downtrodden sections of the society. The philosophy is that we want to achieve a society where there is no haves and have-nots. The inequality in income that we have, and forget about only income, inequality in status, that we need to eradicate. We need to improve the standards of people. That is socialism for us. Socialism does not mean that government controls everything. There will be no private property, and we will reach a point where government will wither away, the state will wither away, and we will enter into communism, which is a stateless state. No, that's not the purpose of socialism under the Constitution of India. So the nature of the Indian state is we are sovereign, we are socialist, we are democratic, we are republic. And the fifth nature is secular. Again, secularism is an ideology. And what is secularism basically? Anybody can tell me definition of secularism? What is the definition of secularism? Secularism is an ideology which talks about separation of ecclesiastical matters from the matters of state. Matters related to religion are to be separated from the state. What does that mean? Previously, or you can say the matters related to church, because this concept secularism, not the philosophy behind secularism, but this concept of secularism emerged in the West, emerged after the Renaissance, a period of enlightenment in Europe, where they wanted that church should step back. Church should not influence what is the economic policy of the state. Church cannot determine what is the educational policy of the state. Church should not determine what should be the family structure in the state. The church should play the role only in the religious matter and leave everything else to a state. How do we determine our foreign policy? What should we do with the economy? That should be left to the state. Separate the church matters from other matters. That is what secularism is, which emerged in Europe. Although as an ideology, we followed this in ancient India as well. But when we say secularism is an ideology, which talks about separation of ecclesiastical matters, church matters from that matters related to state, this concept of secularism varies from country to country. For example, in United States, it is non-interference. Non-interference by state in religious matters. In United States, no matter what you want to do in your private personal space, within the four walls of your home, when it comes to matters related to religion, the state will not interfere. You cannot go to the state and tell the state that this particular religion is doing this, praying 5 times or doing puja or going on a mass prayer. So why are you coming to us? We will not interfere. We have separated ourselves from religious matters. We will not interfere at all. But when it comes to France, although it is non-interference in religious matters, but they may force you to maintain non-religious nature of a secular place. What is a secular place? For example, you go to a Gurdwara. Clear? There is some decorum that you need to follow, some dignity that you need to follow. Maybe you have to cover your hair, cover your head. The state cannot tell you you should not cover your hair. Why? Because that's a religious space. and that a particular religious community will decide how to conduct yourself in that religious space. But if it's a secular space, for example, it's a public road, for example, it's a multiplex, for example, it's a public park, there you should not display your religious symbols. You should not be wearing a burqa, a veil. You may not be wearing even a turban for a Sikh community. Why? Because it is a secular space. Don't religiousize, don't make it religious. Don't try to bring your religion in a public space. If you want to do something within the four walls of your home, but don't make a secular place a religious one. So in France, burqa can be banned. Turban can be banned. Why? Because the state is secular. In your private space, do whatever you want to do, but the public space, don't make it religious. That's secularism in France. In China and other communist states, I told you, they believe in Karl Marx, and Karl Marx said religion is the opium of the masses. They are anti-religious atheist states, which basically means secular, because religion will not dictate how we will conduct our policies. Religion is completely kept away. In fact, there is a province, Xinjiang province in China, which is dominated by Uyghurs, and these Uyghurs are predominantly Muslims. If you are a member of government, if you are working under the government, you can't even pray 5 times a day. You can't even fast during the fasting month. Why? Because the state will force you not to practice religion. And that is leading to a lot of conflict in the Xinjiang province. And this is an area of concern for China, because there is also a secessionist tendency amongst the Uyghurs. But that would be dealt by international relations. Long story short, here in China, in communist states, these are anti-religious atheist states. But what about India? India is unique, just like India. And secularism in India is unique, just like India. If India is secular, what does that mean? Did India become secular in 1976? Or was India secular always? India was always secular. But what was implicit till 1976 was made explicit in 1976. How can we say secularism in India was implicit till 1976? Look at the provisions in our constitution. Article 14, which talks about right to equality. That means everybody will be treated equally in India. Does it say that religious minorities will be treated differently and majority will be treated differently? No. That means Article 14 lays down secular identity of India. Article 15, which clearly says that there can be no discrimination on the ground of religion, which means we are secular. Article 16, which says if the state wants to advertise jobs, wants to announce posts in government, while appointing those people, the state cannot discriminate on the ground of religion. Not just this. Article 25 gives the fundamental right to every single person in India that you can practice your religion. That means we will not stop you from practicing your religion. Article 27, it prohibits taxes such as jizya, which Aurangzeb imposed. Prior to that, Akbar tried to abolish it, but Aurangzeb reimposed this. Only on non-Muslims, tax you will have to pay. That means tax for a specific religion. That is something that cannot be imposed in India, which means we are secular. And this office of the President of India, this office of the Prime Minister, this office of the ministers, is it reserved only for the majority community? Or can anybody contest election and become the President of India? It's open to all, which means India was secular. But what was implicit in 1976 became explicit in 1976 when the term secular was added to the preamble. But what is secularism in India? Secularism in India means equal respect for all religions. Secularism in India means equal protection of all religions. Secularism in India means state has no religion. And which was remarkable. 15th August 1947, India emerged as an independent entity, but with a cost. The cost was the partition of this country on religious grounds. Pakistan, which emerged, it emerged as an Islamic state for Muslims. But India did not remain a society, a country only for Hindus. The constitution makers, the founding fathers of Indian Republic, they said we will remain secular. Although Pakistan was created for Muslims, but India will not be a state which will be for any other religion. It will be a state for everybody. So we will equally protect all religions. We will equally promote all religions. The state will not claim any particular religion to be a state religion. State religion in the sense, Pakistan is an Islamic state, Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Bangladesh has adopted Islam as a religion. Sri Lanka has adopted Buddhism as a state religion. Burma or Myanmar has adopted one form of Buddhism as the state religion. So look at our neighborhood, where countries which emerged independent, they proclaim one or the other religion as a state religion. But India remained unique, did not impose, did not proclaim any religion as the state religion. India is not a theocratic state. That is secularism in India. But secularism in India is also taking different forms. Political parties can be registered in the name of religion. All India Majlis-e-Ittihadul Muslimin, led by Asaduddin Owaisi. Akali Dal, led by the Badals. Hindu Sena, led by others. So India is a country which is secular, but within secular state, political parties based on their religious identity can contest elections. India is a secular state, but where the then President of India inaugurated the Somnath temple. India is a secular state where the Prime Minister performed the consecration of the Ayodhya Ram temple. So now there are people who say that over a period of time, the lines are blurring between the secular nature and the Hindu Rashtra. These are not my words, don't lynch me for that. These are the words of constitutional experts who say that over the past few years, what has happened is that the state is transforming itself into a Hindu Rashtra, which is reflective, where the Prime Minister, when he inaugurates the parliament, the new parliament, puja is conducted. Others say, even if puja was conducted, but other religious rituals were also conducted inside the parliament. But the basic emphasis was on the puja, where the Prime Minister, Ram temple was inaugurated. Clear? Ideally, who should perform the puja? The priests, because that's their job. The 4 Shankaracharyas decided not to go, not to visit for a variety of reasons. One reason was that the temple is still not complete. But who performed the puja? The Prime Minister. Now look at it this way. Did Mr. Modi perform this puja because of his identity as a priest or because of his identity as the Prime Minister of India? He's not a priest, but he is the Prime Minister. The problem is when the Prime Minister of a secular state performing a puja, consecrating a temple, it goes against the spirit of secularism. But be that as it may, this is something that we will discuss in the society of India, where the concept secularism, communalism, and their impact on the society would be discussed. Here in polity, we will only talk about the law. We will talk about the constitutional provisions. And the constitutional provision is that if we are secular, that means we will equally protect every religion. We will equally promote every religion. How will we equally promote every religion? Because the government says, if you want to go on a Kailash Mansavar Yatra, we will fund you. The government says, if you are Jews of Meghalaya, we will send you to Jerusalem on the state money. Until a few years ago, if you wanted to go on a Hajj pilgrimage to Makkah, the government would subsidize you. Equal promotion of all religion, equal protection of all religion, equal respect of all religion. That is secularism in India. And the secularism in India is where the state interferes to decide whether some religious practices are to be followed or not. And the Supreme Court is not far behind. Supreme Court says, why should government have all the fun? We are also here. Come here. So what? Essential religious practices doctrine, which we will discuss in Article 25, but very briefly here. A matter reached Australian High Court related to a religious practice. Australian High Court said, this matter is dismissed. Why? Because what is religion to you is superstition for someone else. Why are you coming to us? Dismissed. Okay. Similar matter reached the Supreme Court of India. Supreme Court said, we are here. Beautiful case. We want to be involved every year and everywhere. We will tell you what is essential to your religion. And what is essential to your religion will get protection. What is not essential to your religion will not get protection. Who am I? I'm a judge. I may be well versed in the constitution. I may be well versed in the laws. I may have read the procedure codes, the IPC, the CRPC, now the new Hindi terms involved, which I could not recall. I may have read the constitution of other countries, but I am not an expert on religion. How can a judge determine and decide what is integral to a religion, what is not integral to a religion? That is secularism in India, where the Supreme Court gets to decide, interferes in the religious matters. Women of all age groups may pray at Shabarimala temple, says a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court. But majority of the women in Kerala, they don't want to pay obeisance at the temple of Lord Ayappa because they think that this is against the norms. There are temples which are reserved exclusively for men. There are temples which are reserved exclusively for women. We have to respect our religious practices. Who is the Supreme Court to tell us all the women may pray at the Shabarimala? So Supreme Court getting involved in deciding and determining what is and what constitutes essential religious practices. That is secularism in India, of a completely different form, of a completely different type. That is why we say secularism in India is just like India, unique in its own sense. So the 5 natures of Indian state, as described in the preamble. One is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. Any questions as of now, please let me know, then we can jump to the objectives part. Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Samhita. I know that. I was just adding humor. Hi, sir. Good morning. Your 30 lesson in this course is sufficient to prelims. Yes, it should be sufficient. 32 classes, not 30. 32 classes, close to 96 hours, plus the crash course that we would conduct at the time of the prelims, and the weekly current affairs. So can we expect question on Hindu Rashtra means? It won't be a question on Hindu Rashtra. It will be the contemporary idea of secularism in India, how secularism as a concept has evolved in India. So communism is a stateless state. So why are communist countries so state-controlled? They call themselves communist states, but communism has not emerged anywhere in the world. That's why we say Karl Marx's concept of communism is utopia. It has never emerged anywhere in the world. So there is no such state as a communist state. Proletariat means workers. Liberty of worship, yes, it is secularism. We will not tell you that you should stop worshipping your religion. In your own private space, do whatever you want to do. That's secularism because the state is not interfering. Will these serfs emerge as a capitalist? May or may not happen. But even if they emerge, they will not be part of serfs. They will be part of the capitalist class. They will be the bourgeois. Okay. Update on current affairs classes. We will have current affairs classes from 4th of March. Now let's look at what are the other aspects of the preamble mentioned in the Constitution. In the preamble, as I told you, first it talks about we the people, which means the source from which the Constitution derives its authority are the people of India. Second, it tells us about the nature of the Indian state: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic. All these terms in capitals, no comma separating one from the other, which means treat it as an integral whole. Fourth thing that the preamble tells us is the date on which the Constitution was adopted, which is different from the date the Constitution was enacted, when the Constitution entered into force. And the third thing that preamble tells us, what do we want to achieve through this Constitution? What are the objectives of this Constitution? And the first objective, according to the preamble of Indian Constitution, is justice. And justice not only in social sphere, but economic sphere, political sphere. Social justice in the sense, what used to happen during the later Vedic period, when you will read ancient India, we had a system called Chaturvarna system, which I think is mentioned in the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda. It talks about Chaturvarna system, but this Varna system was based on what? Yes, Purusha Shukta him. This Varna system was based on division of labor. What is this division of labor? Listen to me carefully. Do we need doctors in the society? We do. Should we have only doctors in the society? We need engineers as well. We need teachers as well. We need plumbers as well. We need electricians as well. So that is what we call division of labor. Some people will do one set of work, the other will do another set of work, and no work is good or bad because everything is required. Every amount of work is required. So when this Chaturvarna system emerged, Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, it was based on division of labor. Those who will impart knowledge would be Brahmins. Those who will work in the trade, commerce, industry, who would engage in mercantilist activities, those will be the Vaishyas. Those, because of their warrior status, because of the way they are organized, those who will ensure that the unity and integrity of that country or that state is maintained, defense of that state is maintained, those will be the Kshatriyas. And those who will do the menial jobs, who will serve others, for example, those who will be, let's say, who will take care of cleaning stuff, those will be the Shudras. This was primarily meant to be the division of labor, Varna system. But over a period of time, what was this Varna system based on division of labor? It became by birth instead of by their work. So now those born of Brahmins would be Brahmins. It's not that if you will impart knowledge, you will be a Brahmin. No. Once you have imparted knowledge, you are a Brahmin. Now the children born to you will all be Brahmins, and they will occupy the topmost slot in the hierarchy. Now this has become a hierarchical system, which can't change. Can a Kshatriya, if he also starts embracing knowledge, imparting knowledge, become a Brahmin, achieve the status of a Brahmin? No. And this is how this status, this system, which was meant to be division of labor, assumed the form of a hierarchical institution known as the caste system. And these were principal arguments between Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi ji believed in the Varna system. He said, you don't have to destroy this. This is based on division of labor. Dr. Ambedkar said, now enough is enough. This whole system has to collapse. Because he viewed this caste system as a building which has so many stairs, but you die in the stair in which you were born, according to Dr. Ambedkar. So he was completely critical of this caste system in the Hindu society, and that is how he, in the 1950s, decided to give up Hinduism and embraced Buddhism, along with lakhs of his followers. But be that as it may, this caste system became too exploitative, where if I'm from an untouchable caste, I could not walk on the road when a Brahmin or an upper caste would come on the other side, because I had to quickly jump into the mud and embrace myself, because the stench coming from my clothes would cause pollution to the member of the upper caste. Because the mind started making binary, zeros and ones, binary, pure pollution. The dress, the food habits, the drinking habits, the ideology of the so-called upper caste, pure, and that of the so-called lower caste, impure. If I'm a Dalit, I'm walking on the road and I see a Brahmin coming on the other hand, I cannot spit on the streets, on the floor. I need a pot around my neck and I have to spit in that. Because if I spit on the floor, it will cause pollution to the members of the upper caste. I can't sport a mustache because that is reserved for the upper caste. I can't ride a horse because that is reserved for the upper caste. I could not drink from the well because that was meant for the upper caste. Even if I'm choking, I need water, and upper caste cannot offer me a glass of water. Untouchables. Dr. Ambedkar himself belonged to the Dalit community, and for days together he could not drink water from the well in his school because that well was reserved for the member of the upper caste. If such exploitation continued, why would a big section of our society, the so-called untouchables, why would they ask for independence? What independence would give them? Dr. Ambedkar said, we promise you, we will give you justice. We will correct the historic wrongs committed against you by giving you justice. And how that justice? In social sphere. We will ensure that all of you will have right to vote. All of you can get access to education. All of you can visit temples. All the temples of the Hindu society will be open to all sections of Hindus. So that historic injustice that has been perpetrated against you, we will abolish that. That is the purpose of this constitution. That is the objective mentioned in the preamble, social justice. So there are different structures in the Hindu society, and there are claims by different sections of the society. We have to accept them so that we build a welfare state. Social justice is one aspect of justice in India. But whether it is happening or not, untouchability is still rampant. Every day, newspaper articles would say a particular member of the Dalit community was killed, was assaulted because of that caste identity. In this practice, manual scavenging is a reality. Who are these people who manually clean our dirt by cleaning the septic tanks manually? All of them belong to a particular community, the Dalit community. They enter into these septic tanks without protective gear, without protective masks. They inhale these poisonous gases, and hundreds of them have also died. Despite the fact that a law was passed which imposed limitations on manual scavenging, this practice continues. And all of them belong to a member of a particular caste. So there is a clash between what is mentioned in the constitution and what is the empirical reality. Constitution says untouchability is abolished. Reality is it is rampant. Constitution says social justice, but the reality is whenever a Dalit member tries to open up a business, in some cases he is not allowed to. You may have watched this movie, beautiful sociological movies for this, where there was one ironsmith who wanted to transition into farming, but he was boycotted. He was not allowed because how dare you take up the profession which is meant for the upper castes? You can't do that. And he was socially boycotted. Social boycotts are rampant. If I'm a Dalit, I have a shop, I have a grocery shop, I may be boycotted. Don't buy groceries from him. But what this is, how this hampers our development, we will discuss this in social justice. But here, what is the objective of the constitution? As mentioned in the preamble, social justice. Justice for every single member of the society. But not only in social sphere, but political justice. The absence of any arbitrary distinction between man and a man in political sphere. And don't tell me, and don't call me sexist because I've not mentioned woman and woman, because that's how our constitution is written. It always talks about he. That's how the old books are written, man. No man shall be punished, because women are always punished. But be that as it may, political justice, the absence of any arbitrary distinction between man and a man in political sphere, that is political justice. Look at me carefully. When were the women allowed to vote in the United States? What year was it? In 1919, close to 1920s, that's how right to vote was given to women in the United States. Around the same time in United Kingdom as well. In Switzerland in 1970s. So all these European countries who claim to be civilized countries, how did they treat their women? Why is it that till date we haven't had a women president in the United States of America? And then they will lecture to so-called underdeveloped, developing Asian and African countries that you need to work on your gender justice. In 1950, when Constitution was enacted in India, stories were written in foreign press that Indian experiment is doomed to fail. This society will collapse. Why? Because they have experimented with democracy. Not just democracy, they have experimented with universal adult franchise, where they are giving right to vote to everybody who is above the age of 21. Initially, it was 21, later it was reduced to 18 in 1989. So they said, just a matter of time, Indian society will collapse, the state will collapse because they have given right to vote to everybody. Because they would give right to vote only to the rich. They would give right to vote only to those who possess property. They would give right to vote only to men. They would give right to vote only to those who are educated. And we poor Indians, we would give right to vote to poor, rich, educated, uneducated, literate, illiterate, man and a woman. And we prove to them that we are a successful democracy. We may have problems. We may have limitations. We may have concerns. But nobody can deny the fact that we are a vibrant democracy. Democracy in the sense, every 5 years, elections are conducted. Every 5 years, elections are free and fair. And no distinction between man and man. Anybody can contest election, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're an upper caste or you're a lower caste, so-called lower caste. And in fact, we have reservation. Reservation for SCs and STs in Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. Reservation for women as well. That constitutional amendment bill has been passed, but won't be implemented now, which we will discuss later. But it has been passed, so there is reservation for women as well in Panchayati Raj previously, now in Lok Sabha as well as legislative assemblies. That is justice, political justice, because these people were always kept out of the political system. One classic case, Lily Thomas versus Union of India, 2013. What happened in this case? There used to be Section 8, Clause 4 of the Representation of the People Act 1951. We will discuss Representation of the People Act 1951 in great detail in elections chapter, but very briefly here. Let's say this is a candidate who is contesting elections. And this candidate is either an existing legislator, listen to me carefully, existing legislator or a commoner. Who can contest election in 2024? Either me, who is not a member of the parliament right now, or Mr. Modi, who is already a member of the parliament. Clear? So either you are a legislator or you're a commoner. Clear? According to Section 8, Clause 4, what if I was convicted by the court and court sentenced me to jail for 2 or more years, saying you have committed this crime, now you are sentenced to jail for 2 or more years. I cannot contest elections. I am disqualified from contesting elections. In fact, if I serve 10 years in jail, once I am released for another 6 years, I cannot contest elections. Because that's what Representation of the People Act tells me. That till the time you are in jail, you cannot contest elections because you are convicted. Once you come out of the jail for another 6 years, you cannot contest elections. But that was not the case with an existing legislator. If I'm an existing MLA, existing MP, I have also been convicted by the court, and the court says you are guilty or sentenced to 10 years in jail. I will not be disqualified. In fact, what I will be given, according to this Section 8, Clause 4, I will get a 3-month window. Do one thing, approach the High Court. Within 3 months, approach the High Court. I went to High Court. By the time I have contested elections again, I have won the election again. Now in my second term, I approach the High Court. High Court says you are guilty. But even then, I'm not disqualified. What am I given? I'm given 3-month window. You approach the Supreme Court. And we know judiciary is a slow poison in India. The case from district court all the way up to Supreme Court may take 20 years. And by that time, this legislator may already be dead. And the son, obviously, very rarely daughter, will take up his political mantle. Matter went to the court, Lily Thomas versus Union of India. Lily Thomas was an advocate. She unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. Her portrait is mentioned in the Supreme Court because of some beautiful petitions she has filed. She approached the court and said, "My lord, is political justice mentioned in the preamble as one of the objectives of the Constitution?" The court said, "Yes." "Sir, what is political justice?" Arbitrary distinction between man and a man in political affairs should not happen. That's what political justice is. "Sir, can you explain me what is arbitrary?" "Something that you do without logic. Something which you can't explain. Where there is no rationale. Why you are doing this, what you're doing." "Sir, what about Section 8, Clause 4 of Representation of the People Act? Don't you think that is arbitrary? That violates political justice?" The court asked, "But what is that Section 8, Clause 4? We don't understand." "Yeah, because you're busy reading religious structure so that you can tell us what is essential religious practice. But I will explain what Section 8, Clause 4 is. It creates a distinction that there are two individuals. One is the sitting legislator, the other is a commoner. If this commoner is convicted, no option, he cannot contest elections. But if this legislator is convicted, he gets a 3-month window to appeal before the High Court. Again convicted, again gets 3-month window to appeal before the Supreme Court. So Sunny Deol was right. Tariq pe tariq pe tariq. And by that time, he is writing his own tariq of becoming a legislator, while at the same time, he was a criminal. A lawbreaker continues as a lawmaker. Supreme Court said, yes, this is wrong. This violates political justice, and as such, this Section 8, Clause 4 is unconstitutional. So one objective of the Constitution is justice, to correct the historic wrongs. Justice in social affairs, justice in political affairs, justice in economic affairs. Are we a capitalist society? In reality, yes. Although Constitution says we are a socialist country, but we are a capitalist society, where capitalism would mean, or for that matter, previously what we were, at least till 1991, we could have said that we are a socialist state. For example, how many Bajaj scooters will be manufactured, that government would decide. What would be the price of a Maruti vehicle, that government would decide. How much can a particular factory manufacture, that government would decide. At what cost would you want to sell, that the government would decide. So government would control everything. It was only after 1991 reforms, when liberalization happened, privatization happened, globalization happened. There was a time when Coca-Cola was asked to wind up from India. Go back. It only came back in 1991. And that's how, when Coca-Cola was not here, Thumbs Up started getting manufacturing. And when Coca-Cola came back to India, they bought Thumbs Up, and then they tried to kill it. But they could not, because people had been accustomed to the rich taste of Thumbs Up. But why are we discussing this? Leave it. Long story short, we became a capitalist society after 1991, where what you produce, how much you produce, at what cost you produce, the state will not interfere. But this capitalism has emerged in India and in other parts of the country, world as well, as welfare capitalism. Welfare capitalism, in a sense, we will attract FDI in India. We will impose taxes on the rich. We will allow the rich to produce what they want to produce at what cost they want to sell. But whatever proceeds we get from this, whatever money we get from this, we will use it for Ayushman Bharat. We will use it for Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. We will use it for scholarships. We will use it for pension. We will use it for LPG subsidy. We will use it for kerosene subsidy. We will use it for various other policies and programs uplifting the people. So yes, we are a capitalist society, but within this capitalist society, whatever money the government is generating, a significant part of that money is being spent on the welfare of the people. That's exactly what socialism also wanted. What socialism wanted is that this government should come into the picture, improve the standards of the living standards of the people, bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, ensure that justice is given to the people. And that can happen even in a capitalist country, even in a capitalist society, by conceptualizing this term known as welfare capitalism, where the proceeds from capitalism, the investments raised through capitalism, can be used to fund various welfare programs. That is economic justice. So objectives of the constitution: justice, social, economic, political. Then three big slogans of French Revolution: LEF, liberty, equality, fraternity. Liberty of thought. Think whatever you want to think. Express it through cartoons, through movies, through songs. But it is another matter that a song was written and made by a superstar from South, Mr. Dhanush. Why this Kolavari Di? Have you heard of that song? A case was imposed saying the song should be banned. Why? Because it corrupts the minds of the people. If we have liberty of thought, liberty of expression, why such cases? A beautiful movie was made by Sanjay Leela Bansali called Padmavati. The members in Rajasthan objected to it and forced the director to change the name so that people are not confused. And he changed the name drastically so as to avoid the confusion by removing I and called it Padmavat. But exactly what is the objective? Constitution says the objective is freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship. That is the freedom that you have. And this was the slogan in the French Revolution as well. For example, Voltaire. What did he say? Voltaire said, I disagree with whatever you say, but I will defend till death your right to say it. Because there should be freedom to say whatever you want to say, to express whatever you want to express. That is the objective. That through this constitution, what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve a society where there is freedom of thought. People can think whatever they want to think. They can express whatever they want to express. They can believe in whatever they want to believe in. They can worship whoever they want to worship. And we need to banish inequality. That is another objective. Treat everybody equally. There should be no discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, nothing. And India is diverse. This diversity is not only religious diversity. India is diverse in terms of the food that we eat, in terms of the languages that we speak, in terms of the dialects that we speak, in terms of the caste, in terms of tribal status. Yet from north to south, east to west, if there is one thing that can bind us together, is a sense that we are all proud Indians. And that will give a sense of fraternity, that we belong to one common motherland, a sense of brotherhood. That despite the fact that we are different, we are diverse, we are unique, yet we are together in this beautiful diverse land as one people because we belong to the same motherland. That should be the objective of the constitution. That what we want to achieve through this constitution, we want to give freedom to the people. Say whatever you want to say. We want to abolish inequality in the society. And we want to ensure that the people remain one from north to south, from east to west. And through this constitution, we will have to ensure that every individual in India should be given dignity. Because if we want to create a society which is one, where there is a sense of brotherhood, brotherhood cannot be if only the big brother is helping you and you are criticizing your big brother. You're accusing your big brother of something else. He is doing so much to help you, but you're not reciprocating that help, that respect. It has to be mutual. So we need to guarantee dignity as well. So through this dignity, what we will do, we will build a society where we are all equal to each other, where we are united. And once we are united, this nation as a whole will never be destroyed. It will remain integrated. Because once we are integrated, once we are united, once we are together, despite the diversity that we have, the differences that we might have, that is the objective of the constitution. Liberty, equality, fraternity, assuring the dignity of an individual. And through this dignity, we will ensure unity and integrity of India. This is what preamble is all about. But now, we will have to look at some other aspects of preamble, but for that, we will take a break. But if you have any questions till now, please let me know, then we will take a break. Do you need a break? If yes, raise your hands or give me a thumbs up. But give me thumbs up only once. Don't raise your hands multiple times. Oh, there are a lot of people who are saying, no, we don't need a break. Okay, let's take a break. Let's meet at 7:45 a.m. See you on the other side of the break. Shall we resume? There's a war going on in the comment section. Should I be a spectator or Cold War? Okay. Okay. Please engage with each other. It's always a healthy thing to do. Be respectful of each other. Debate, discuss. Please do that. Okay. Now, is preamble part of the Constitution or not? In Birubari Union case, Supreme Court said no, it's not part of the Constitution. In Keshavananda Bharati case, Supreme Court said yes, it is part of the Constitution. How? Book normally starts with chapter 1. So does that mean Constitution would start with part 1 of the Constitution? Preface is normally not part of the book because the contents of this book would be from chapter 1. If preamble is like the preface of a constitution, then preface is not part of the Constitution, preamble is not part of the Constitution. In Birubari Union case, Supreme Court said no, it's not part of the Constitution. But why? But in Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, Supreme Court said it is part of the Constitution. Why? Because in Birubari Union case, Supreme Court was not told, was not informed how preamble came to be part of the Constitution. How other articles became part of the Constitution? Because all these articles were part of the draft Constitution. One by one, they were discussed, debated in the Constituent Assembly, and only after they were voted upon by the Constituent Assembly, then these articles became part of the Constitution. Those articles which were not voted upon, which could not get the majority in the Constituent Assembly, ultimately these articles did not become part of the Constitution. This was not communicated to the court in Birubari Union case in 1960 that just like any other part of the Constitution, preamble was also discussed. Preamble was also voted upon. In fact, preamble was the last item voted upon. And that is how the Supreme Court said in Keshavananda Bharati, if preamble, just like any other article of the Constitution, any other part of the Constitution, was also discussed, was also debated, was also voted upon, which means preamble is part of the Constitution. But sir, I have a confusion. What? Sir, you are lying. Sir, what did I lie? Sir, yesterday in your class you said preamble is based upon Objectives Resolution of Pandit Nehru, which was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 22nd of January 1947, right? And now you are saying preamble is the last item added to the Constitution. That means once every other article became part of the Constitution, the last item to be added to the Constitution was the preamble. So that means you're lying. Objectives Resolution, which forms the basis of the preamble. This Objectives Resolution was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 22nd January 1947. Objectives Resolution, not the preamble. Preamble is based on the Objectives Resolution. And this preamble, we the people of India, it became the last item to be added to the Constitution, to be voted upon. Why? Because Constitution makers thought that since preamble is the philosophy of the Constitution, every other article of the Constitution should be in agreement with the preamble. And we have to ensure that every article of the Constitution does not violate the spirit of the philosophy of the Constitution, which is the preamble. Because the preamble talks about liberty of thought. What if we are not giving freedom of speech and expression in the Constitution? That means Constitution is not compatible with its preface. If preamble talks about liberty of belief, freedom of worship, if you are not giving fundamental right to practice your religion, that means the Constitution is not compatible with the preamble. That is why the last item added to the Constitution was the preamble, so that we ensure that every part of the Constitution, every article of the Constitution does not go against the spirit of the preamble, which means preamble is part of the Constitution. Next, what are the quick points that you must keep in mind if questions are asked in your prelims examination? US Constitution was the first one to begin with the preamble. US Constitution also talks about we the people of United States of America. So which was the first constitution to start with the preamble? US Constitution. What is the purpose of the preamble? We say preamble is not enforceable in a court of law. Now listen to me carefully. What do we mean by preamble is not enforceable in a court of law? For example, you have fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression. What if the state is violating your freedom of speech and expression? What do? You go to the court, you knock the doors of the Supreme Court will protect your fundamental rights. Because if these fundamental rights are violated by the state, you can approach the court will protect your fundamental rights, which means fundamental rights are enforceable in a court of law. If the state has snatched your right to life, you can enforce your right to life by knocking the doors of the court. The courts will uphold your freedom of speech and expression, your right to life, your fundamental rights. But you can't approach the court to enforce preamble, because preamble in itself is not enforceable. It is the philosophy of the Constitution. It reflects the broad objectives of the Constitution. In itself, it is not enforceable, so you can't approach the court saying, implement the preamble, because it is not enforceable in a court of law. Does that mean it has no significance then? It has a significance. What is the significance? Two things. Now listen to me carefully. What is the preamble? Philosophy. What does preamble say? What are the objectives that we want to achieve in this Constitution, through this Constitution? What does preamble talk about? Equality. So does that mean you can't approach the court to enforce equality? You can, because the right to equality is a fundamental right. Constitution talks about in the preamble liberty of thought. For that you have freedom of speech and expression. If that fundamental right is violated, you can enforce it in the court. You can get it enforced in the court. Preamble talks about dignity of an individual. If that dignity is violated, you can approach the court, but not because you are violating preamble, because the right to dignity is a fundamental right under Article 21. Which basically means, although preamble in itself as a document is not enforceable in a court of law, that does not mean it is meaningless. Because to implement preamble, we have fundamental rights. To implement preamble, we have other provisions of the Constitution. If Constitution talks about democratic is one nature, we have parliamentary form of democracy. If that parliamentary form of democracy is violated, you can go to the court. So preamble in itself is not enforceable in a court of law, but preamble is given shape, is implemented through various provisions of the Constitution. If those are violated, you can go to the court. This is significance number one. Significance number two. Preamble aids the legal interpretation of the Constitution where the language is found to be ambiguous. Ambiguous in the sense, what do we mean by ambiguity? For example, you are writing an answer and you're sharing your answer with me. Sir, please share your feedback, whether this answer is good, bad, or ugly, and also give us marks. I'm giving you a feedback and I'm telling you that your answer is vague. Please write properly. What sort of feedback is this? This feedback itself is vague, because you have to tell me what are the points that you have mentioned in your answer which are vague, which are not clear, so that I can improve upon it. All you're saying is your answer is vague. My dear sir, your feedback is vague. What if there are some provisions in the Constitution which are ambiguous? We take a look at the preamble to find the interpretation. For example, Aadhaar. What is Aadhaar? It's a unique 12-digit identification number. What makes Aadhaar unique is because of biometrics. Biometrics in the form of fingerprint, iris scan, right? If I will give you a random number that this is your identity is XYZ12345. Another person PQRS 3476. It's a vague number. Anybody can manipulate this number. But what if this number is backed by your biometric? Fingerprints are unique, iris scan is unique. By taking your biometrics, I can make this unique identification number, which is unique for you, and nobody else can manipulate it. That is what Aadhaar is. What was the purpose of Aadhaar? Why Aadhaar was introduced in India when Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister? For direct benefit transfer. What is this direct benefit transfer? Benefits are to be transferred to beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries? Beneficiaries of the welfare state. For example, I am a beneficiary. I should get scholarship from the state. I should get old age pension from the state. I should get kerosene subsidy from the state. I should get LPG subsidy from the state. Clear? I should get disability bonus from the state. Let's assume for a while that I'm a woman above the age of 50 and I'm eligible for old age pension. Whoever is above the age of 60 is a woman. She gets an old age pension, which is 2,000 rupees per month. For example, prior to Aadhaar, there used to be two problems associated with this. One was duplication. The other was leakage. What do we mean by duplication and leakage? The central government allocates 10,000 crore to the states that please do one thing. All the women who are above the age of 60, they should be given 2,000 rupees per month as old age pension. But this money was not reaching the beneficiary. Way back in 1985, Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. He said if 1 rupee is given to the states, is given to the beneficiaries, is allocated to a beneficiary, 85 paisa disappears and goes into the pockets of the corrupt politicians, bureaucrats, and middlemen. That is why, despite spending crores and crores of rupees on poverty alleviation, India unfortunately is still a poor country. Why? Because there used to be duplication, leakage. How? If the money is given by the central government, this money is to be disbursed by a local officer. So what I will do, I'm a corrupt officer. There are 1,000 beneficiaries in my district who are eligible for this old age pension. I'm telling the government that no, there are not 1,000, there are 10,000 beneficiaries, which means the remaining 9,000 odd people. I have created ghosts of these 9,000 people. These 9,000 old age women, they are not present. I'm just duplicating them and creating another set of beneficiaries. And for them, 9,000 into 2,000, that money gets deposited in my pocket. And there was leakage as well. This old age woman would come to me, give me 2,000 rupees because Modi ji said you are entitled for 2,000 rupees. I tell her Modi ji is lying. He's not giving you 2,000, he's giving you only 200. No, Modi ji can never lie. I'm telling you he's lying. He's giving you only 200 rupees. No, give me 2,000. Go. I will not give you 200 even. Okay, give me 200 at least. So one, I'm inflating the beneficiary count from 1,000 to 10,000. And even these people who are eligible for 2,000, I'm not giving them 2,000, I'm giving them 200, and the remaining money I'm pocketing. Some giving to the bureaucrats, some reaching the politicians as well. Dr. Manmohan Singh said, let's hit upon an idea. Let's have a unique identification number and link it to the bank account. That means instead of money going to the beneficiary through this middleman, why can't we directly transfer this benefit to the bank account of that beneficiary? And this beneficiary was also very clever. This beneficiary would create multiple bank accounts saying deposit in this bank account. Then I'm another woman, deposit in this bank account. So same woman getting money in various bank accounts because these bank accounts are different in different names. Now every bank account is to be linked with Aadhaar. Aadhaar is unique. That means now there will be no leakage, no duplication. So this was a beautiful system which was created called Aadhaar, for which there was an institution created called Unique Identification Authority of India. At that time, the BJP was in opposition, opposed this Aadhaar, saying this is not the way you transfer benefit. Dr. Manmohan Singh said, wait, history will be kinder to me than the current day media and politicians. If you will come to power, you will implement this. And Mr. Modi did implement this by creating a law. But then this Aadhaar was challenged in the court in a very famous case as Puttaswamy case, saying this Aadhaar, it violates privacy. How Aadhaar violates privacy? Listen to me carefully. We have different databases. Database where information is stored, where your data is stored. For example, you're an individual X. Your health records are stored here. Your driving license record is stored here. Your call records are here. Your other records are here and here. But these are in different silos. Can we link all of them together? If databases, if you're a student of engineering, you would have read database management. You need a primary key to link all these databases together. And that primary key can become Aadhaar because Aadhaar is unique. So if while buying a SIM card, you are giving Aadhaar, by giving the same Aadhaar, you are buying an insurance. By giving the same Aadhaar, you are getting a driving license. By buying the same Aadhaar, you are getting a bank account created. Now using this Aadhaar, the state will come to know everything about you. How everything? This will be like a mass surveillance. Mass surveillance in the sense, who are you calling? What are you talking? Which website are you using to book your air tickets? Where are you traveling? When are you coming back? Everything becomes known to the state. So your life is as transparent as a contact lens. The state is entering your bedroom as well through this Aadhaar, which Puttaswamy, who was the former judge, retired judge of Karnataka High Court, he said violates the right to privacy. Matter went to the court. Mr. Arun Jaitley was the minister. Mr. Arun Jaitley told the court, the government told the court that there is no such thing as right to privacy. Where is it mentioned that right to privacy is a fundamental right? Now, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court had to decide whether this right to privacy is a fundamental right or not. And all these 9 judges of the Supreme Court said right to privacy indeed is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. But how did Supreme Court come to this conclusion? Supreme Court used preamble to interpret the Constitution. What does preamble talks about? It talks about objectives of the Constitution. One such objective is mentioned dignity. We have to assure dignity to every individual. And Supreme Court said, 9 judges of the Supreme Court said, we cannot assure dignity unless and until you have privacy. So what you eat, who do you sleep with, who do you make love to, what you drink, what do you practice, this should not be under the control of the state. The state cannot interfere. Right to privacy indeed is a fundamental right. But at the same time, Aadhaar is constitutional. Why? Because sometimes this detail is also required for legitimate state interest. For example, if we have to prevent leakage and duplication in the system, for that we need Aadhaar, we need your fingerprint, we need your iris scan. Although we are asking your privacy, snatching your privacy, but it is for larger state interest because we have to save money, we have to ensure that money reaches the intended beneficiary. If right to privacy is a fundamental right and I am a terrorist, I am talking to my handler in Pakistan, my phone should be tapped, can be tapped. That is not violation of privacy because no fundamental right is. But what are we discussing? We are discussing what is the significance of preamble. If US Constitution was the first one to begin with the preamble, if preamble in itself is not enforceable in a court of law, then what is the significance? The significance is that preamble is used to interpret the provisions of the Constitution when it is found ambiguous, when it is not clear. Do we have right to privacy or not? It's not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. But Supreme Court said it is part of Article 21, right to life. Why? Because preamble tells us one of the objectives of the Constitution is dignity, and you cannot assure dignity unless and until you have privacy. So right to privacy is a fundamental right. Now the question before the court. Could the preamble have been amended? Dr. Subramaniam Swamy, Rajya Sabha MP, approaches the court along with other lawyers that we need to delete this term secular and socialist from the preamble. Delete it. Why? Because it was inserted in 1976. That time, the country was in emergency. And you could not have amended the preamble. Why? Because the objectives mentioned in the preamble, they are part of the basic structure of the Constitution. What is this basic structure? Listen to me carefully. Supreme Court said in Keshavananda Bharti case that can Article 368 be used to amend the Constitution? Yes. But there are some basic features of the Constitution, some fundamental features of the Constitution which cannot be changed, which cannot be altered. That means even if you get 100% majority in the parliament, you cannot dare touch these provisions because these are part of the basic structure. And I will explain this case in constitutional amendment later. You can check the schedule when we are discussing this case. But here, can Article 368 be used to amend the Constitution? Yes. But don't you dare touch basic structure. One such basic structure are the principles enshrined in the preamble. So can Constitution be amended to convert our democratic country, democratic setup into a dictatorship? No, because that is part of the basic structure. Can we change our character, which is sovereign, to a dominion? No, we can't, because that is part of the basic structure. Can the republican nature of Indian Constitution be changed to have monarchy? No, because that is part of the basic structure. Can we snatch liberty, equality, fraternity, dignity of an individual? No, because that is part of the basic structure mentioned in the preamble. So if preamble is part of the basic structure, can you amend the preamble? Could the preamble have been amended without changing its date of adoption? What does that mean? Preamble says, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved, blah, 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 enact and adopt and give to ourselves this Constitution on 26 November 1949. Can preamble be amended to say, now this Constitution is adopted on 26 January 2024 or 26 May 2014 when Modi ji came to power? No, you can't do that because that would evaporate the essence of the preamble. But apart from date of adoption, can any other provision be amended since it is part of the basic structure? The courts previously have said, you can enhance or enrich preamble. How? By adding the word socialist, by adding the word secular. By adding these two natures to Indian state, you are not interfering with the three existing natures. By mentioning that we are a secular state, does it have any impact on our sovereign nature, on our republic nature, on our democratic nature? No. By adding the word socialist, does it have an impact on other natures of the Indian state? No. But can you say, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular Hindu Rashtra, or secular Islamic state, or a secular Khalistani state? You can't do that because these are not compatible with each other. You can't be secular and an Islamic state at the same time. You can't be secular and the Hindu Rashtra at the same time. So this you can't change. Now Dr. Subramaniam Swamy is asking the court, please delete or order the deletion of these terms, secular and socialist, because these are not mentioned in the original preamble. These were added when the country was under emergency. So it was not done through democratic means. Plus, if the preamble cannot be amended, that means we can't add socialist and secular. If the preamble can be amended, then what stops a future government from changing the date on which the Constitution was adopted? But now the Supreme Court is asking another counter question. Without changing the date, can any other part of the preamble be amended? Now, what exactly would be the judgment of the court? We will have to keep a watch on, we will have to track it, and then we will have an elaborate discussion on that judgment. But this is what preamble is. But two more important points. If any power is not given in the Constitution, preamble can't provide. If any power is not stopped in the Constitution, preamble can't stop. What does that mean? Can the Constitution be amended using Article 368? Yes. This power is given to the Parliament. Can we use preamble to say that since preamble talks about we have adopted this Constitution on 26 November 1949, which means after this date you cannot amend the Constitution? No. Why? Because the power to amend the Constitution is given to the Parliament. So if that power is explicitly given in the Constitution, not stopped in the Constitution, preamble cannot be invoked to stop it. And if any power is not given in the Constitution, preamble can't provide. In a sense, can we change our Constitution from republic to monarchy? This power is not given in the Constitution. So preamble also cannot provide saying, since you are sovereign, you can do this. No, this is not the power provided to the Constitution, provided by the Constitution. That is what preamble of the Indian Constitution is. Any questions? Let me know, and then we will jump to part 1 of the Constitution, Union and its territory. Any questions? Clear? No. No. Answer, please. But what is your question, my dear? But sir, we amended it in 1976. That was upheld. Now it can be again challenged. And now the challenge is, please delete it. We will have to wait and watch what Supreme Court will say. But we have given privacy by using dignity in preamble. Privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21 because that deals with the right to life and personal liberty. This life cannot be meaningful unless and until you have dignity. Since dignity is one of the objectives of the Constitution, because preamble talks about dignity, that is why right to privacy, which is important in dignity, which is a fundamental right under Article 21. So right to privacy is a fundamental right. Let me check the doubt section. So apart from PPTs, please provide written notes. Written notes, you already have Lakshmikant. You have these PPTs. Whatever I'm writing, make note of it. Then you don't need notes. Make your own notes. Make note making your habit. That will help in your answer writing. If preamble is not enforceable, then why Puttaswamy went to Supreme Court? Puttaswamy did not approach the Supreme Court on the grounds that preamble is violated. Puttaswamy approached the court saying privacy is violated, which he thinks is a fundamental right. So he went to the Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental right, not for the enforcement of preamble. So why should Supreme Court be informed about the preamble? Won't Supreme Court know about preamble without somebody actually telling Supreme Court about preamble? Let's look at it this way. We know that something wrong is happening to you. Your land is confiscated by the state. But without you approaching the court, court on its own cannot take this matter. Somebody has to approach the court. Similarly, Supreme Court on its own cannot say delete socialist and secular. Somebody has to approach the court for this. That's the whole purpose of approaching the court. So we always say that we can't, but government find loopholes like in cases of Article 370. It was not a loophole, it was upheld by the court. The court said it was a process that you duly followed, and that's how it was done. And laws are also about the way in which you interpret it. Okay, shall we start with part 1? Okay. Now let's look at part 1 of the Constitution, Union and its territory. And in this part, we will have to discuss Articles 1 to 4. But you don't have to remember these article numbers. Don't waste your time memorizing these article numbers. Just understand the concept. Clear? Article 1, it talks about name and territory of the Union. Article 1, Clause 1, I will mention clause by clause, but you don't have to remember these clauses, memorize them. I will still mention clause by clause so that there is continuity. There's a flow. Article 1, Clause 1 says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Now, there are two terms important here, two concepts. India, that is Bharat, and shall be a union of states. When we look at India, that is Bharat, it gives us a clear message that we have a dual name for this country. Two names, India as well as Bharat. But why? When the Constituent Assembly met on 9th of December 1946, and then for 2 to 3 years, they met continuously debating, creating, enacting this constitution, there was also a debate on the nomenclature. What should we call this newly independent country? Some members of the Constituent Assembly, they felt that let's stick to this name India because that is how we are known everywhere in the world. Others said, no, India is the name given to us by the colonizers, by the British. So why should we have an alien name for this country? We should go back to our previous name, which is Bharat. Others said, no, why Bharat? We should call this country Hindustan. Others said, no, Hindustan is the name given by the Persians. We don't want a foreigner name. The name of this country is Bharat. Others were fascinated with Soviet Union. What was the name of that country? Union of Soviet Socialist States. Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. They said we should call this country Union of Socialist States of India. Some said Union of Socialist Secular States of India. Some said, why should we call this country India or Bharat or Hindustan or USSI? We should call this country Jambu Dvip, the land of the Jambu tree. That's how we were known way back in the past. So there was a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. Primarily, the debate was amongst the modernists and the traditionalists. Modernists said we should stick with this name India because that is how we are known now, no matter who has given us this name. Traditionalists said we should revert to the original name, which is Bharat. And ultimately, a compromise was reached. The compromise was we will have two names for this country, India as well as Bharat. Just like a child born, mother's family says the child should be named X, father's family says the child should be named Y. There's a lot of back and forth, to and fro. Ultimately, we say we will have one's name on the certificate and another pet name. Both names are satisfying both the families. So at that time, there was a satisfaction. Traditionalists said, look, the name of this country is Bharat. Because Constitution says India, that is Bharat. So Bharat is the real name. Modernists said, no, the real name of this country is India. Because India name appears at the start. India, that is Bharat. So India is the real name. But ultimately, there was no such confusion. Two names for this country, India as well as Bharat. But a couple of times in the past, people approached the Supreme Court, saying, my lord, said what? Can you please issue a directive to the central government saying, please call this country Bharat and not India? Previously, this petition was dismissed by the court, saying, don't come to us with these petitions. There are two names for this country, India and Bharat. You call it India, you call it Bharat. Why are you coming to us? Don't waste our time. We can't direct the central government that you should use only Bharat because we have two names for this country, India, that is Bharat. But now, of late, the government of India is in its communication using the term Bharat quite often. There was G2 summit in India. The communication which was sent to the heads of foreign countries who were visiting India, the communication read, invitation from the president of Bharat. Prime Minister Modi went to Vietnam. In that communication also, it was mentioned Prime Minister of Bharat. So now the allegation against the central government is that you are promoting the Hindi name for this country, which is Bharat. Others say it's a Sanskrit name. Why are you confusing it with Hindi? But the people from southern India, they say you are blatantly promoting Hindi. Is promoting Hindi something unconstitutional on part of the central government? The answer is a big no. Why? Because under Article 350A of the Constitution, it shall be the responsibility of the union. It shall be the responsibility on the central government. That what union government will do? Promote the use of Hindi, so that Hindi can become means of expression of our composite culture. So promoting Hindi by the central government is not unconstitutional, because Constitution has imposed a duty, a responsibility on the union, that you have to take steps to ensure that Hindi is promoted, so that Hindi emerges as the medium of expression for India. But India, that is Bharat. These are the two names for this country to satisfy the traditionalists as well as the modernists. So we have two names for this country. India, that is Bharat. In fact, if you look at the Hindi translation of Constitution, it mentions Bharat athwa India. Bharat, that is India. So in Hindi translation, Bharat appears first. In English translation, India appears first. So no name has primacy. No name has superiority. Both are the names for this country. We have dual names for this country. India, that is Bharat. Is that clear? So Article 1, which talks about name and territory of the union. Article 1, Clause 1 says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. But now the problem is, what is this term, union of states? Does that mean our constitution is explicitly saying that we are a unitary polity and not federal? Because if we were a federal constitution, a federal polity, then constitution would have mentioned India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states, which would have given us a sense that our constitution also believes that we are federal. This question was asked to Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Ambedkar was asked, why have you mentioned India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, and not India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states? Dr. Ambedkar said, we are a federal polity. Our constitution is federal. Even then, I have used the term union of states for two reasons. Reason number one, India is not the result of an agreement among states. And reason number two, no state can secede from the Union of India. Article 1, Clause 1. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. India, that is Bharat. We have two names for this country, dual names for this country. That much is understood. If at all we want to change the name of this country, and we want to remove India and we want to mention only Bharat, for that, what is the process? Can anybody tell me? Yes, you require a constitutional amendment, but do you have to? My question is, do you have to inform United Nations? Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. We are sovereign. Very good. You have to inform United Nations. There's a country whose name got changed recently. What was that country? Turkey. Turkey became Turkey. This name was sent to United Nations. United Nations accepted, and Turkey became Turkey. But now you will ask, why? This is my name. Why do we have to inform United Nations, right? This is a fundamental question. Nikhil is asking this question. Nikhil, tomorrow, if your name is changed to Sachin, and you are saying it is my right, I will change it to Sachin, then I will change it to Virat, then I will change it back to Nikhil, which is my right, 100%. But you have to inform it to your school, so that the teachers can also call you Sachin, so that I can also call you Sachin, so that there is no confusion whether you're Sachin or Nikhil. Some certificates mention Sachin, some say Nikhil. That leads to confusion. If we are a member of United Nations, an integral part of United Nations, and tomorrow communication is to be sent to us, we want them to recognize us with our name that we have created, which is Bharat, or which is only India. So you have to inform United Nations. That does not mean we are not sovereign. That does not mean we don't have the power to change our name. We can. It's just that as a formality, so that other countries can also start calling us Bharat, we have to inform the United Nations. You will have to mention in newspaper as well. Yes, I want to change my name. Anybody having any objections to this change in name may submit the objections within 30 days to the registrar of birth and death, or to my school authorities. Does UN have the right to reject? No, they won't, unless and until you are calling your country China. China will say, this is my name. Why are you taking my name? Right? Or you're calling your country wider China. That won't happen. The United Nations will not accept it. So India, that is Bharat. Or internally also, if you have to change the name, it requires a constitutional amendment. But maybe this constitutional amendment would be struck down by the judiciary, saying the name India is also part of the basic structure of the constitution. You can't change the name of this country from India to only Bharat. Both names have to be retained, which is part of our basic structure. Can happen. I'm not saying it will happen. It can happen. But you need a constitutional amendment, and you need to inform United Nations as well. Clear? India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. If the constitution says shall be a union of states, that means constitution accepts that we are a unitary polity. Otherwise, the term mentioned would have been India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states. B.R. Ambedkar was asked, Dr. Ambedkar, why have you not added federation of states, instead union of states? Does that mean we are a unitary polity? Dr. Ambedkar said, no, we are a federal polity. Our constitution is federal. But I've used the term union of states for two reasons. One, India is not the result of an agreement between states. I said, I don't understand. What are you saying? We need to tomorrow teach civil services aspirants. They will ask this question. What is this? India is not the result of an agreement between states. I said, listen to me carefully. North America, there were 13 colonies which were under the control of Britain. These 13 colonies revolted against the Britain. American War of Independence, American Revolution. And now these 13 colonies liberated themselves. They became independent countries. But now these independent countries decided to come together through a treaty. They signed a treaty, and through this treaty, what they did, they decided to come together to create a political entity, and that political entity came to be known as United States of America. So federation is only when there is a treaty, when there is an agreement between two or more states, when they want to come together to create a federating unit, which is United States of America. That didn't happen in India. In India, India was already present. Whether you call it India, you call it Bharat, it was already present. So India was not created because the states decided to come together to create, through an agreement, through a treaty, a state of India. But Dr. Ambedkar, please come here. Said what? There were more than 562 princely states. They were also independent. And most of them, they decided to join India. They decided to come together, signed an instrument of accession to join India. Then why are you not calling it a result of an agreement between states? There was an agreement between princely states and the government of India. So you're right. But did that agreement create India? Or was India already present? India was already present. They joined through instrument of accession. They joined India. But they did not, through this instrument, create India. India was already present. That's why I don't want people to confuse that India was created because there was an agreement between states. India is not the result of an agreement between states. India was already present. And second, if it's a federation, and what's a federation? 2, 3, 5, 10, 13, 14, many states deciding to come together to create a political entity through a treaty. This political entity is created through a treaty. Can one state withdraw from this treaty, which means withdraw from the state? Yes. That is the purpose of federation. If federation is through treaty, one state may come out of federation. I don't want to be no longer part of this. They can do that. But in India, no state has the right to secede. If I would have mentioned India, that is Bharat, shall be a federation of states, the sense that the states would have got is that at any point in time, they can come out of it as well. We will not let that happen. India has to be united. The territorial integrity and sovereignty has to remain intact. So India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Despite the fact that we are a federation, despite the fact that we are a federal polity, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states because of these two reasons. Is that clear? 100%? Perfect. Article 1, Clause 2, the states and territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule of the Constitution. What does that mean? If we have states in India, if we have territories in India, which we will discuss later, how many states do we have? 28. How many union territories do we have? 8. Their names and what are their territories? What is their spread? Those are to be mentioned where? In the first schedule of the Constitution. Like this. This is the first schedule. It talks about the name. It talks about the territory which comprises this particular state or union territory. Similarly, what is the territory of Himachal, Haryana, Nagaland, Manipur, and various other states? This is the first schedule of the Constitution. But you need to ask me, sir, what is a schedule? And what is the purpose of the schedule? Schedule, you can say, is an explanatory memorandum of an article. If an article requires more explanation, we add the schedule at the end of the Constitution. But schedule is part of the Constitution. It is not outside the part of the Constitution. It is part of the Constitution. But if we need more explanation about a particular article, we add a schedule. Now the question is, sir, why? Why do we need a schedule at the end of the Constitution? Why, if an article requires more explanation, we add a schedule? It is a cosmetic measure. What is a cosmetic measure? So that it appears good. There's a pimple on your cheek, you add a foundation, you add something to hide it. Cosmetic. And what is so cosmetic about a schedule? Otherwise, this article would look very bulky. Imagine if there was no first schedule, the article would say, Article 1, Clause 2, the states and territories are specified below. 28 states, 8 union territories. So this entire article would look very bulky. Maybe. The founders of our Constitution, the founding fathers, they believed in fitness. Lean is in. Our article should be as lean as possible. So that if we need more explanation for an article, we will add an explanation to it at the end of the Constitution in the form of a schedule. So Article 1, which talks about name and territory of the union, Article 1, Clause 1 says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Is that clear? Clear. Article 1, Clause 2, the names of the states and territories thereof shall be specified in the first schedule. So first schedule talks about names of the 28 states and 8 union territories. But what is the schedule? An explanatory memorandum of an article. What does that mean? If an article requires more explanation, add the explanation at the end of the Constitution in the form of a schedule. Why? Because otherwise, the article would look very bulky. That's the only reason. It's for cosmetic reason. And Article 1, Clause 3, the territory of India shall comprise of territories of the states, the union territories specified in the first schedule, and such other territories as may be acquired. If the name of this country is India as well as Bharat, if all the states and territories which are part of India will be mentioned in the first schedule, then what is the territorial spread of India? Either we can have states or we can have union territories. What's the difference between the states and union territories? We will discuss in great detail when we will discuss union territories, but very briefly here. I told you that India is a federal polity. And in a federal constitution, there are two important characteristics. Although there are 5, but there are 2 major characteristics of a federal polity. What are these? Anyone? What are the 2 important characteristics of a federal constitution? Dual government and distribution of powers. Very good. States share this federal relationship with the union. So all these 28 states, they share this federal relationship with the union. That means we have dual government, we have distribution of powers, constitutionally recognized. But union territories are distinct. They are directly controlled by the center. There is no dual government, controlled directly by the center. Which means who is the head of these union territories? President. Who makes laws for these union territories? Parliament. So Delhi is also a union territory. But we have Mr. Kejriwal, who will be in jail very soon. Puducherry is also a union territory. They have a legislative assembly as well. Delhi and Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir. Next. These are unique because these UTs will have their legislative assembly as well. But even then, the ultimate control is with the center. Which means if there is a territory of India consists of either we can have states, or we can have union territories, or we can have acquired territories. If this clause C was not there, then our territory would have remained fixed forever. But what if tomorrow we have to create an Akhand Bharat, where Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan also, Myanmar also, they all will have to come under the Akhand Bharat. That means we will have to acquire these territories. So if this clause was not mentioned, our territory would have remained fixed. But we can acquire territories. And have we acquired territories in the past? We have. For example, French territory, Pondicherry. which the name changed after some time. It has become now Puducherry. Pondicherry was ceded to India by the French government in 1954. But from 1954 till 1962, it was administered as an acquired territory. And then in 1963, it became a union territory. Union territory with a legislative assembly as well. But sir, why since 1954 to 1962 was Pondicherry or Puducherry administered as an acquired territory? Because in 1954, agreement was signed. In 1962, this agreement was ratified. What is the difference? Listen to me carefully. Sir, after the polity course is over, can you still stay in touch with us? I'll say yes. That means now there is an agreement. We have signed an agreement that you and me, we will stay in touch even after the polity course is over. But then we need to ratify it, implement it. And by creating a schedule, I will tell you that on these particular dates, you can get in touch with me and I will resolve your doubts. That is the difference between signing and ratification. Signing is, my intention is clear. We have an in-principle agreement that we will do this. Ratification is when we implement it. For example, India has signed United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Signed. That means our principal agreement is we will take steps to eradicate corruption from the society, from India. But when we need to ratify this convention, that means we have to create laws in place, structures in place, offices in place, which can check corruption. So ratification is when you exactly implement it. There was an agreement between France and the government of India in 1954 that Pondicherry will be given to you. But this could not be implemented unless and until the French Parliament ratified it. Because the French government had said, we will give you Pondicherry. But this decision of France government to give Pondicherry to us so that we can acquire Pondicherry, this was ratified by vote by the French Parliament in 1962. That is why from this 1954 period till 1962, Pondicherry was governed, administered as an acquired territory. And then once it became a full-fledged part of India, it was made a union territory. And this union territory was given a legislative assembly as well in 1963. That is Article 1. Is that clear? Why union territory? Why not state? Because it is also spread geographically. Some parts of Pondicherry are closer to Andhra. Some parts are closer to Tamil Nadu. That is why there is no uniformity. So that is why it was given a union territory. And I will tell you in union territories chapter, why do we have 8 union territories in the first place? And should union territories continue or not? Okay. Now let's look at Article 2, admission or establishment of new states. Constitution says under Article 2, Parliament may. What Parliament can do? It can enact a law, it can pass a law. And through this law, it can admit into union or establish new states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. And the classic example of this is Sikkim. But understand Article 2, Parliament may. What Parliament can do? It can pass a law. Through this law, what Parliament can do? It can admit into Union of India or establish new states, but on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. And the example is Sikkim. Sikkim used to be initially part of India, but then it was taken away from India during the colonial period. And when India got independence, Sikkim was under a monarchy, and the institution of monarchy was called Chogyal. Chogyal in the sense, Akbar was part of Mughal dynasty, Babur was part of Mughal dynasty, Jahangir, Shah Jahan was part of the Mughal dynasty. So the dynasty was Mughals. Kings were different, multiple kings. Similarly, this institution in Sikkim was called Chogyal. So Chogyal is like Mughals, and there were different kings. Sikkim was under Chogyal. In 1947, when India got independence, Chogyal and Government of India came up with an agreement under which Sikkim became a protectorate of India. What does that mean, protectorate? For example, this is India. India became a protectorate, or Sikkim became a protectorate of India. That means India became a protector of Sikkim, which means India will protect Sikkim diplomatically as well as militarily. That means if any country attacks Sikkim, the government of India will send its army and protect Sikkim from military assault. And diplomatically also. If United Nations or another world forum somebody is taking action against Sikkim, the government of India will diplomatically support Sikkim. And in international law, protectorate is a small country, weak country, which gets protection from a bigger country, stronger country. And Sikkim became a protectorate of India. India will protect Sikkim from diplomatic exercises, from military exercises as well. But then came the spring of 1973, where there was a massive movement in Sikkim asking for democracy. Just like we had Arab Spring, where Kosovo, Libya, and various other countries, they started revolting, the people started revolting, and they basically wanted an end to dictatorship, end to monarchy, and they wanted to implement democracy. There was a spring of such protest in 1973 in Sikkim, where people wanted that we don't need this institution of Chogyal, we need democracy, and we need to be closely associated with India. Ultimately, there were talks between Government of India, between the protesters, and Chogyal. And ultimately, it was decided elections will be conducted in Sikkim. Chogyal would become a nominal head, a constitutional head, just like the King of England, just like the Queen of England. The real power will be given to the Assembly, to the Parliament of Sikkim. And when elections were held, a pro-New Delhi political party, Sikkimese Congress, won the election. And when it won the election, it immediately passed a law saying institution of Chogyal has now become nominal. That means you're only a nominal head. The real power is with us, real power is with the government. Chogyal protested. Chogyal went to various countries saying, look, India has ditched us. We need your support to counter India. And when all of this was happening, Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister. 35th Amendment of the Indian Constitution was made. Article 2, capital A was added, and Sikkim became an associate state of India. What do we mean by associate state? Not a full-fledged state, not a union territory, an associate state. Opposition protested. Madam Indira Gandhi, hi. Why? Why? Because you are violating the Constitution. You are a dictator. You have scant disregard to the Constitution. Why? What have I done? Madam, look at Article 1, Clause 3. It says the territory of India shall either consist of states or union territories or acquired territories. Where is the concept of associate state mentioned anywhere in the Constitution? You are violating the Constitution. You are disrupting the Constitution. You don't have respect towards the Constitution. But perhaps Indira Gandhi was right. If Sikkim would have been mentioned as an acquired territory, but without the permission of Chogyal, it could not have effected. We would have been embarrassed in the entire world. But when all of this was happening in 1975, what happened? There was a referendum in Sikkim. The Sikkimese government asked the people that what we are going to do, we are going to pass a law through which the institution of Chogyal is abolished. Previously, Chogyal had all the powers. Then 1974, he becomes a nominal head, constitutional head. The real power is with the government, with the assembly, with the parliament. Now, 1 year later in 1975, this whole institution is abolished. And the Sikkim government is telling the people, you now vote. Do you want to become a full-fledged part of India? Or do you want to remain like an associate state? Or do you want to become an independent country? What do you want to do? Overwhelming majority of people in Sikkim voted in favor of India. And the very next year, 36th Constitutional Amendment Act was passed. Article 2, capital A was repealed. Now, Sikkim, instead of an associate state, became a full-fledged state of India. So, Article 2, Parliament may, by law, what Parliament can do, it can admit into union or establish states on such terms and conditions as it thinks fit. Madam Gandhi was told, how can you make Sikkim an associate state? She said, I can do it. How? Because look at Article 2. Parliament may, by law. And what we have done, we have passed a 35th Constitutional Amendment Act. Through this law, we are admitting Sikkim as an associate state. Because on such terms and conditions as Parliament thinks fit. But very next year, the institution of Chogyal was abolished. A referendum was conducted in Sikkim. Overwhelming majority of people in Sikkim voted in favor of India. And that is how next year, in 36th Constitutional Amendment Act, Article 2, capital A was repealed. Sikkim became a full-fledged state of India in 1975. That is Article 2 of the Constitution. Any questions? Those who understood, give me a thumbs up, but only once. Those who did not understand, please raise your hands. What is the difference between admitting and establishment? I will tell you tomorrow. Tomorrow, let's meet 6 o'clock. I'll tell you what is the difference between admitting and establishment. Admit basically means admit from outside. Sikkim was admitted from outside to become a state of India. Establishment is if we have union territories right now who are already part of India, if they can be converted into states, that means you're establishing states from union territories. Why Sikkim does not become a union territory? Because that's how you negotiate. That's the policy of the government. No questions? J&K reorganization also tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much for staying with me. I'll see you tomorrow, 6 o'clock in the morning. Till then, have a great time. All the best. Bye-bye. Today's general. General means?
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yes, Aditya, you have a question?
Yes, sir.
No one has raised a hand. Harsh?
Hello. Good morning, sir.
Oh. Good morning. Okay, see you tomorrow then, 6 o'clock in the morning. Bye-bye. Good night. Good morning, sorry.